Long ago, there was a caliph who ruled Baghdad. And a son was born to him, his first son. And so he sent out through the city and noticed that there would be a great feast and invited the people to come. And they came with gifts for the new son, gold and silver and jewels and finely woven carpets. But the young sage, Mahel Rabi, brought no gift. And this enraged the caliph, and he had the guards drag Mahel Rabi to him. And he said, "Why have you brought no gift to honor my son?" And the young sage said, "The others, they've brought visible gifts, gold and silver and jewels. I have an invisible gift. It is this. When your son is old enough to listen, I will come each day and tell him a story. And when he is grown, he will be wise and compassionate." And Mahel Rabi did as he had promised. Each day he came and told the boy a story, and the boy grew to a young man. And after many years, the old caliph died. And the young man, now fully grown, became the new caliph. And he ruled with more wisdom and compassion than any caliph had before him. And when he died, a tomb was erected in the center of the city, and at the caliph's request, inscribed on the tomb were the words, "If I have ruled wisely and with compassion, it is because of the seeds sown by the story." Storytelling allows people to express their lives, what's happened in their life, what they've witnessed, what they think they believe they've witnessed. Storytellers were honored in most countries, so much so that in some countries they were second in importance to the king. In medieval times, if you wanted to apply to be a storyteller, you had this job description. You had to know all the current tales, and you had to know the university thesis and be able to explain them. You had to know the court scandals. You had to know the medicinal benefits of herbs and simple medicine. And at an instant's notice, you must create a poem or a song for a lord or lady. And you must play at least 2 instruments. Anyone want to apply? Bruno Bettelheim, the famous psychologist, in his book, The Uses of Enchantment, The Meaning and Importance of Fairy Tales, said that stories remind us who we were, where we came from, and why we have values and beliefs we have today. People understood that their good fortune or their tragedy wasn't a result of just randomness, but of their integrity, of how they treated others, and how wisely they made decisions in their lives. It seems for the past 60 years or so, we've lost this connection with story in our personal and educational lives. In 1965, I became a children's librarian in South Boston under the tutelage of Martha Engler, who was my mentor. And she informed me for the Saturday sessions, we didn't read stories. We told them. And so I became a storyteller. In 1968, I was sent to Eugene, to the University of Oregon, to train as a VISTA worker, a volunteer in service to America, Domestic Peace Corps. And they placed me at Whitaker School, the second poorest school in the state of Oregon. And there we developed the after-school programs, and it was the first time that I taught storytelling to young people. And a year and a half later, Roosevelt Junior High committed to an innovative program based on William Glasser's Schools Without Failure. This program centered on student choice. Students could choose from over 200 classes created by teachers every term. And the focus was on learning, improving skills, and fostering the joy of learning. And if something didn't work, the motto was, nothing is written in concrete. We can work together to improve it for both the students and the staff. Among the classes that I taught, 34 class curriculums over those 32 years. I was playwriting. Through the camera's eye was American history through movies. And movies were wonderful to teach history because they're people and they're acting, and we could talk about their behavior and the decision making and what happened at that moment in history. And then go 50 years ahead and talk about how that changed and look at it through human actions. Multicultural folktales and law was another one. Laughter, reading, and writing, humor, and jokes, and so on. Wild and Tame was animal literature, and we had a focus on endangered species for half of it, and then pet care, and speakers would come in and talk about those areas. So the students expanded their knowledge beyond just reading books about animals. Storytelling, and then the nationally known Troupe of Tellers. And the storytelling was open to all skill levels and all class levels. So when we were junior high, there were 7th, 8th, and 9th graders in the storytelling class. When it was in middle school, it was 6, 7, and 8. And we had high achievers. We had students who had visual impairments, hearing impairments. I had a few students with MS, and we had non-readers. And with the non-readers, we'd simply pair them with a reader who would read the story to them until they could learn to tell it. And the empowerment of that student, that low-skill student, when he or she could stand before an audience and tell a story and have that audience enjoy the telling, was just something amazing to see. And usually it led them to go into more interest in their academic skills. When you go to polls and surveys, most people, one of their 3 greatest fears is giving a speech in public. Probably 99% of us will never give a formal speech in public, as you would learn in a traditional speech class. But probably 99% of us would like to share stories and do share stories with people, because stories are us. So if you want to learn to tell a tale, you could learn to tell one in just half an hour with these steps. First, find a tale that's about 1 to 2 pages of text. Then read it through one time for the action. What happens in the story? Read it through a second time to find out who the characters are. What do they look like? How do they speak? How do they behave? Read it a third time through and look at the scene. What are the smells and sounds and colors? Close the book and tell the story out loud, or tell it to a partner. Then open the book, read it again, find out what you left out, and tell the story again, or maybe a third time. In a half hour, you'll have a story to tell. When we did the beginning storytelling classes, we would open with theater games. Now, theater games allow students to act and improve their speaking skills, as well as have fun being in front of an audience. So even the lowest skilled student would walk in front of the group, even the shy ones. And after a while, after they walked in front of the group, even for 10 seconds, they would feel a little more confident, and they would say something, and that would build from there, because it was learning, it wasn't grading. Each story that they told, they had 3 stories to tell the term, and each one had to be from a different people or a different continent. And so the continent would be in the evaluation sheet, and these are the skills we focused on: vocal projection and clarity, pacing, character development, dramatic gestures, body and facial expression, preparation, and in the final evaluation was also how they worked together as a team or a class. And so they had 3 of these, and it would be based on the first one they told, and the third one, and the improvement they made. So it was their individual improvement. There was no comparison in terms of what other students were doing in the class. In 1969, I created the Troupe of Tellers, which became a nationally known storytelling troupe. And it ran for 24 years. And what it was is I would select 9 to 10 students for the 12-person troupe who had good skills or had been in my storytelling class, had acting experience, and would probably become very good tellers, but also could work together as a team. And then 3 to 4 spaces I would save for those students I felt had special needs, personal or family. And although they may not become the greatest tellers, the experiences that they have or would have in that storytelling would be meaningful to their lives. And so these storytellers, when they're in a troupe, and they did perform each spring term for 10 weeks, 2 to 3 times a week, and they perform for about 3,000 students in the schools during each spring term. So the students had to learn 4 stories. They had to prepare it all the time, 2 a cappella songs, and in a team of 6, they had to prepare 2 story theater pieces that they created. They would go into the school, and they would have to organize the class, fit their program to the time schedule of the school, and know that at a moment's notice, any one of them could be substituted as a teller for someone else, or a story would have to be substituted to meet the time limit. So they had that flexibility. After doing that for 10 weeks, nothing fazed them. They would get up in groups of 300 and 400, organize a program, and do their storytelling. Because they had that self-confidence, and they became, as you'll hear, life skills. We have now a video that we put together called When the Troupe Tells Tales. This was done years ago, because this is ended in 1994. And it's film clips from past tellings, and then what you will see is a studio production of the students actually discussing storytelling and what they understand it is and how to prepare for it, so on. So let's have the first clip.
Okay, what about things like pacing, the pace at which you tell your stories? What do you watch out for, and how do you do that? Shauna?
Well, pacing is one of the hardest things for me. When I learn my story, I usually like to do it in front of someone or in front of a mirror and watch myself. And I always want to go slower in my brain than I think I am, because it's almost everyone usually goes too fast at the beginning when they first learn the story. And then on Mondays when we meet in class and work together, I do it in front of the whole group, and they usually tell me if I'm going too fast or need to work on something. So doing it in front of the whole group gives you that critiquing or feedback that tells you about how fast to go. Also, there's one problem we've noticed with a lot of us, with a story, and when we tell it, we're very loud with the dialogue or when characters performing, but what happens with the narrative? It drops.
It drops and is often mumbled, so we have to be real conscious of keeping that narrative up and slow pace so it can be understood also, because that provides the links to the characters and the actions.
This next little clip is just a slice of a boy telling a story and what it's like.
Once in the jungle, there was a family of frogs, but they were not normal frogs. They were wide-mouthed frogs. And wide-mouthed frogs are like any other frog, except whenever they talk, their mouth has to open up really wide. Now, after a while, the mother frog had babies, but she did not know what to feed the babies. So she said, "Husband, you go out to that there jungle and you find out what to feed our babies." And the husband said, "Well, okay," and hopped off.
Now there's a little clip, and what always amazed me is how much they really understood about their storytelling. And it wasn't just a rote thing, that they understood how to choose the stories, what skills they needed to develop, what to look for in a story that would go over well with an audience, and what wouldn't.
Given the types of things you've been doing with the troupe and the skills you've been learning, how do you think these are going to be useful to you in the future, out in the world there?
I think it's going to be great to be able to tell my kids' stories and other things like that, and to have the presence on stage before an audience that this class and this going around and telling will give me. And if my future career involves maybe stage play or acting or something like that, then I think this will also help.
Okay, so this will give you a lot of basic training and skills. Anyone else have any feelings about that?
Well, I think it will help me a lot. I might not go into acting, but if I do a play or something, or I want to be if I'm public speaking, it helps me a lot because, in public speaking, I already have confidence when I tell in front of large groups or say something in front of large groups, and it makes me feel more comfortable now than it did before.
If I go into career of public speaking, then I'm going to have like stage presence and be able to pan and have the audience's attention. And also just like in almost everything I can think of, if I wanted to be a counselor and with babysitting, it really helps if you can have stories ready to like, get their attention.
So you know how to go about preparing, you know what's required, you know what the expectations and feeling is like.
And and you're prepared to like come up with things quickly, because think like if people are sick or not there, you have to like be prepared to tell 2 or 3 stories, and so you can be ready for anything.
Clara was a student who came from Australia to us. Her parents were studying in graduate school at the University of Oregon. And they put her in my beginning storytelling class. Her accent was so thick, we could not understand her stories when she told them. It ended in spring term, where she performed with the Troupe of Tellers. And at the end of the spring, we performed for the faculty. And Clara did that, performed for the faculty. And when we were through, the vice principal came up to me and she said that was amazing, because when she first came to Roosevelt, she would sit in the corner of the cafeteria during lunch and cry because nobody could understand her and she had no friends. And here she was performing before the faculty flawlessly. And that was the growth through storytelling. So this was a comment from a middle school teacher who used the storytelling techniques with her students. And storytelling worked beautifully and helped my middle school students overcome much fear and self-consciousness. This afternoon, 7 kids are reading without books to the 1st and 2nd graders. So in 1983, the troupe received one of the State of Oregon Tom McCall Awards honoring great kids. And the award was given to the troupe for the 20 years that they told stories during the summer at the Eugene Public Library and organized the storytelling programs. In 1993, we were invited to the University of Washington to an international audience for the National Storytelling Conference, where we gave an hour-and-a-half performance workshop. Over 24 years, about 200 tellers told to over 70,000 students in the schools, plus adult groups. A story has its own kind of meaning, its own kind of logic. In the words of the Maori storyteller, the story brings the breath of life, the spirit of life, the word of life. It flies to you and you and you, always the word. Thank you.